I'd like to read, there are these two things that go together beautifully. This one is from Don Juan, Castaneda's Don Juan. That's a good one for you to work with. It's a good one for me to work with, I know. In other words, a man of knowledge has no honor, no dignity, no family, no name, no country, but only life to be lived. And under these circumstances, his only tie to his fellow men is his controlled folly. Thus, a man of knowledge endeavors and sweats and puffs, and if one looks at him, he is just like any ordinary man, except that the folly of his life is under control. Nothing being more important than anything else, a man of knowledge chooses any act and acts it out as if it mattered to him. His controlled folly makes him say that what he does matters and makes him act as if he did, and yet he knows that it doesn't. So when he fulfills his acts, he retreats in peace, and whether his acts are good or bad, or worked or didn't work, is in no way part of his concern. Boy, that's heavy. You ready for that? I'll show you one sneaky little line in there you might choke on a little bit. And whether his acts are good or bad is in no way part of his concern. Yee. For 6 years, I have been working with this little pamphlet. I have this friendly enemy or enemy friend or whatever you call these kinds of love-hate relationships that exist with a man named Trungpa Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And if mantric warfare works, I'm dead, okay? But I still reverence him as a very good teacher. I mean, I may think somebody's hung up, but I still can, if I can get a good teaching out of them, I'll take it. Boy, I'll milk a stone if I can get a teaching out of it. So, I was up at Snowline in the Tetons at a seminar called Crazy Wisdom that was being given by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. I had signed up for it and I was taking it. But it turned out that there were many people there that wanted to say hello to me. So the question was, here I am, this Hindu, Jewish Hindu, in this Buddhist stronghold, and all these people want me to set up appointments and have office hours. And I paid, I'm a student, why don't they leave me alone? But there I am, and what are you supposed to do when you serve? And, you know. So I arranged, I told them the situation, and they said, no, we'd give you a room. And they gave me a room right next to Trungpa's room. And the people would wait for their appointments out in the lobby. It was like a medical office. It was a little wing of a very fancy hotel. And you'd walk out and you'd say, who's next, please? And, you know, and they'd come. And he had his thing, and I had mine. And they signed up on lists to see us. And my people all came out happy. And I don't know how his people came out, because I didn't see them. But I had holy pictures all over my walls, and candles and incense, and I was wearing a robe. I mean, you know, I've got to uphold my traditions. So then I signed up on Trungpa's list. Now, I had had one previous private interview with Trungpa, which was in Vermont. I was on my way to Canada, and I had heard this guy. I went to hear Trungpa in Brooklyn, New York, because I heard about him. I heard about this wild Tibetan Lama who had escaped from Tibet, had been the head of a huge monastery, trained as a tulku since he was, I don't know, 2 years old or something like that. went to Oxford, ended up in Scotland, was in an automobile accident, making love to a girl, drunk, drove into a joke shop. Ended up paralyzed in one side, slowly has regained his stuff. But I was with Ronnie Lang in London, and Ronnie had been called in by Trungpa to cut his Achilles tendon because his foot was spasming all the time. And Ronnie said he wouldn't do that. And Ronnie didn't have a very high estimation of Trungpa. But then I'm sure Trungpa didn't have of Ronnie, and both of them are Meshuggah as far as I'm concerned. Okay. I took acid with Ronnie in London, and he did a terrible thing. He said, "How much should we take?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, Ronnie." Because I thought he's the doctor expert, you know, and I'm just the guy from Massachusetts, you know. So I said, "Well, how about 300? He says, "Well, I've never taken that much before, but if I'm with you, I'm sure it'll be all right," which is, see, that's a dirty thing to do, because then suddenly you're the guide, right? And we started, and he immediately took off his clothes and stood on his head as the acid was coming on. And then he started to make faces at me, and at least I think he was making faces at me. And the faces he was making, it turned out each face would elicit a reaction to me until I realized that we were living out all the social roles of civilization. You know, he'd become the judge and I'd become the prisoner, and we'd become friends, and we were teacher and student and lovers and competitors, and we just went through one after the other until we would sort of grok it, melt into it, and then go to the next one. And we did that for about 5 hours. Never a word was said in the whole session. Until I got paranoid, I think. Okay, at any rate, Trungpa Rinpoche is where we're really at. See, so I walked into Trungpa's room the first time. I went to Vermont because I had been in Brooklyn, and he showed up 2 hours late drunk. That was the first time I saw him. Now, you know, everybody has a guru book of sort of rules of the game. You know, and you've either got such chutzpah to walk in 2 hours late drunk, you know, and be of the head of a Tibetan lineage. You're not the head, but you're a high honcho. See, I don't trust Trungpa, but there's this wonderful guy, Kalu Rinpoche, that I really dig. He's old, his head looks like a skull already. He's just beautiful, and he's just eternally smiling and bubbly, and he's just like the Buddha. And somebody said to him, "What's with Trungpa?" And Kalu said, "If you go to the top of a mountain with a bird and the bird flies, don't think you can." So I have sort of a respect for Trungpa, you know, even though I don't understand him. So the first time I went to Vermont to sort of see him again, he was giving a weekend, and I was out in my van, and a call came, "Trungpa wants to see you," and I went in, and I walk into a room, and in the room is one chair, and he's sitting in it. Next to him, there's a table with a sake bottle on it, and one glass, which he's drinking from. Now, I didn't ask to see him, you know, so I can do nothing but kneel at his feet, which is great. I love theater. And he says to me, "Ram Dass, we have to accept the responsibility." Trungpa, I don't have any responsibility. God has all the responsibility. Ram Dass, you're copping out. That was the interview. There were some pleasantries after that. 2 days later, I got a sterling silver medallion with that endless knot saying, I am very pleased that we are working together. Now, you can interpret that many ways, can't you? If you have an ego, it'll be flattered. If you're paranoid, you feel hustled. Might be a great spiritual initiation you just received. Don't miss that one. It might be a random event. But it is sterling. See, I mean, I went to see Satya Sai Baba in India. Now, Satya Sai Baba is the miracle Baba in southern India. He's great. Every day at 10 and 5, the men line up on one side and the women on the other, and he walks down the line. And as he's going, he'll stop and somebody will hold a piece of newspaper under his arm, and he'll go like this, and from about 6 inches above his hand, this ash appears and falls onto the thing, which is sacred for Booty, and then he wraps it up and gives it to you. And it heals you and does things. And his pictures that people have around the world, when they're real believers, the ashes come out of the pictures. You can buy whatever you want. I'm just telling you how it is. And then he'll give people little jewels and things like this. And he gives them wristwatches that say made in Switzerland. I mean, like this, you know, out of here. So I watched this and I said to one of his old swamis, I said, that's remarkable how he manifests, you know, a Swiss watch made in Switzerland. He says, oh, you don't understand. He doesn't make those. I said, oh, no? He says, no, he just brings them from his warehouse. I said, oh, is that all he does? Well, what the hell? I mean, we can go to the moon, for God's sakes, you know. Maharaji said, I hear you're going to Mars. I said, yeah. He laughed. He thought that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. You can imagine being in the warehouse, see, standing there and something's disappearing, and you say, there's a big run on crucifixes today, isn't there? You know, give you an eerie feeling, wouldn't it? All is not as it seems, life after life. Yet it isn't, that's what's such fun. So Sai Baba's came up to me and he says, Baba Ramadasa. I said, how do you do? He had been prepared, you know, because about 70% of the people are there because they're going to be here now. So I'm kind of an anachronistic culture hero. I was somebody who helped them before they found the truth, right? Okay, I'm John the Baptist for Satya Sai Baba. So he says to me, we're going to sing bhajan in a little while, won't you come and join us? I said, thank you so much, I'd like to. I was there, by the way, to arrange a meeting between Muktananda and Satya Sai Baba. I had been sent by Muktananda. Muktananda, being part of an old lineage, was going to bestow his grace on Satya Sai Baba, who was a Johnny-come-lately. So I went into Sai Baba's room and I sat in the back and he said, oh, no, come up front. So I came up and I sat at his feet and everybody else sat back there, and he looked at me and he said, what is God? That's one of those questions. You can't win, you know, because usually I say it's unspeakable or, you know, Shema Yisro, you know. And whatever I said, he said, no, you're wrong. And then he gave his lecture of the 5 things that God was, like a 5-pointed star. And it was very nicely a nice lecture, and I agreed with everything he said. And then we all sang, and then he got up to leave, and as he went by me, he said, "Ramadas, what do you want?" I said, "Babaji, I don't want anything. I'm very fulfilled. I'm very happy if you will see Swami Muktananda tomorrow at 10. If you'll see Swami Muktananda," he says, "tomorrow at 10. I said, "Okay, that's all I wanted." He says, "No, here, let me give you something." So I'm kneeling at his feet, so his hand is right about here, and I'm watching, like, because I have all of Western science to represent at this moment, right? And I'm watching, and very slowly, this bluish light appears, okay? Now, most people say, "Oh, Ramdas," you know, but this bluish light appears, and it slowly solidifies, and it turns into a little silver-colored, silver medallion that has 5-pointed star in a circle, on which is a little golden head of Sai Baba. And he hands it to me, and it's cold. I mean, not icy cold, just cool. I mean, it's not even hot like it just came through the atmosphere or anything. It's just and it's the kind of thing, it's made so badly, it's the kind of thing you get in Tijuana for about 6 cents, right? Made of zinc or something like that. Now, at least Trungpa is sending me sterling, okay? So the second time I sign up for the interview with Trungpa, and I go in. And he says to me, "How is your meditation?" He's sitting there. Now there are 2 chairs and a sake bottle and 1 glass. So I sit opposite him in the chair, and we look directly into one another's eyes. And he said, "How is your meditation?" And I said, "Well, I do Vipassana, and I do Anapana, and I do insight meditation." He says, "You are beyond all that now. You do Mahavipassana. You just breathe outward. Just go, expand outward. Expand your boundaries outward. Just sit and expand." He said, "Why don't we try it now?" Okay. So we look into each other's eyes, and there's silence. After about 20 seconds, he said, "Ramdas, I think you're still trying." I said, "Yes, that's right." He says, "No, don't try." And then we just expanded outward together until at some point he said, "Yes, you understand." So then he said, "You might enjoy the 3rd Chinese patriarch." So I walked out of the room, and I was in a very expanded state of awareness. I got on the elevator, and I went down to the 1st floor, and I came out, and there was this very exquisite nun who is I think she's Irish, and she was in the Vancouver ashram of Kalu's ashram up in Vancouver. Absolutely radiant girl. She comes up to me and she said, "Oh, it's so good to see you," because we had such a beautiful time together. We hug and embrace, and she said, "Oh, by the way, I brought something I want to give to you." And she pulls out of her bag the 3rd Chinese patriarch. The 3rd Chinese patriarch the writings are called the Sin Sin Ming, which could be called the faith mind, verses on the faith mind, or the faith mind, or the heart mind sutra. It's variously translated. The translator's introduction. This is Richard Clark, who's an interesting Zen teacher. What are we to say of a man's life? Of this man's life and its relevance to us? Seng-san, called So-san by the Japanese, that he lived and that he died, and that such and such tales are told of him and certain words attributed to him. His death is said to have occurred in the year 606 of our counting of time. His birth date is not recorded. Who, after all, was to know? To know what? Tosun does not give him a biography, only mentions him. He apparently wandered as a mendicant, and during the persecution of Buddhists, fled to the mountains. He is said to have been notably kind and gentle and to have come to the dropping away of all bondage and all illusion with the help of Huki, his teacher, thus reaching in himself the fullness of man's possible light. He became the third Chinese patriarch of Zen and continued a poor wandering monk. Nothing special. And he is said to have written this piece, the Sin Sin Ming, perhaps the first Chinese Zen document, tentatively translated below. The title's first character, Sin, shows a man standing by his words and is often translated as faith or trust. The second Sin depicts a heart and has come to mean heart, mind, soul, sometimes Buddha nature. I'll just read you just a very few shlokas from this. Before I do, close your eyes. And just imagine that you are one of those beings that is truly seeking light, seeking freedom. And that you wander about, sometimes confused, sometimes lost. You read what you can find, you listen to other people. And then you hear that in a distant land, there is a being who is free. You don't know whether he is or not. But the messages come with a certain light surrounding them, and they draw you. So you make the voyage to this distant land. You land there, feeling almost self-conscious and foolish, and yet drawn on by the desire to look into the eyes of one who knows. You ask about, and you mention this being's name, and you're told, yes, this being is alive and in this country. Perhaps you will get more information in a village 2 weeks north of here. Going north by oxen cart, on foot. You keep asking, and you feel that you're on the right path. At this village, you are told, yes, he was here just a few short weeks ago. He went to the east. It's the first time you know that it's a he. You go east. You are told, oh yes, he was here but 5 days ago. He went north. You go north. Again and again you ask, and you get closer and closer until finally you meet somebody who is radiant, and they say, ah yes, it is clear that they have just seen something of great beauty. And they say, yes, he is up on that hill in that cave. You bathe in the river, put on a fresh cloth, take the fruit you have brought as an offering and pick flowers, and you climb the mountain, come to the door of the cave, and look inside. In the cave a fire flickers, and in the shadows you see a figure sitting quietly. You stand and wait, and the figure motions for you to enter. You enter, place your fruit and flowers before him, and bow to the ground 3 times. He asks you to sit. This is the moment of all that yearning, of all those days of journeying, of all that hope. As you sit with him, you are aware of the silence and the crackling of the fire. Everything about the space takes on a luminous presence. The darkness is thick darkness. The shadows, living fingers of flame. Your body becomes still. It's as if time and space has disappeared. Thoughts pass through your mind, but none of them hold you anymore, for you are resting in your own awareness. And then this being says to you, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you dislike against what you like is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed to no avail. The way is perfect, like vast space. Nothing is lacking, nothing in excess. Indeed, it is due to our choosing to accept or reject that we do not see the true nature of things. Live neither in entanglement of outer things, nor in inner feelings of emptiness. Be serene in the oneness of things. Such erroneous views will disappear by themselves. When you try to stop activity to achieve passivity, your very effort fills you with activity. As long as you remain in one extreme or the other, you will never know oneness. That's the beginning of what he teaches. But you probably lost him if you're sitting by that fire. Just trying to become the first two lines. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preference. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. When love and hate are both absent, isn't the game to love? Isn't the Zen business a little too far out? It's a book called The Book of Tokens, or The Book of Numbers, G. Manly Hall, in which he says, God is speaking and God says, One who knows not that the Prince of Darkness is the other face, is but the other face of the King of Light, knows not me. The game we are caught in most of the time is the game of the polarities. Good and evil, love and hate, black and white, dark and light, positive and negative, man and woman. Smart. I didn't hear that. Last spring I was in New York and I was listening to the radio, WBAI, and on it Lex Hickson was interviewing a spook. That is, a being who is no longer in a body, which is unusual on a radio show. And this being was speaking through a woman named Pat Rodergeist. He was absolutely delightful. He was charming and clear and beautiful and luminous. And later my friend Judith, Soma Krishnas, went to see Emmanuel, or see Pat and speak to Emmanuel, and then she said, I think you'd enjoy going, so I went and I met Pat, who is a 51-year-old ex-movie actress, yeah. Actress, I guess, theater, and she's married to an artist, artist that draws airplanes, a technical artist. They're a lovely suburban couple. The only problem is that this being Emmanuel speaks through her, which you can feel it's kind of a nuisance for Pat. But she does it because she feels it's a good thing to do, because when Emmanuel speaks, she's kind of shunted aside. She doesn't really know much of what's happening. So I talked with Emmanuel, and it was really a lovely conversation. And one of the things Emmanuel said to me was, see, I went to him with a problem. Because very rarely do you have somebody that knows about bodies and not bodies and stuff like that to talk to. I said, Emmanuel, in approaching enlightenment, it feels as if I am babysitting my own death. Because I realize nobody gets enlightened. That you can get right up to the door, but you can't get through. You think you're somebody, you don't come in here. And I said, as I understand it, you die into the totality, into the one. And I said, but when I talk to people in lectures about this, they don't want to hear that. He said, Ramdas, he said, you humans, it's a nice line. I mean, very few people can use that line, you know. Dolphins could use it. John Lilly has the most extraordinary thing right at Redwood City now, at SeaWorld, or whatever it's called. He's got a thing called Janus, which is a computer. It's got one face of a dolphin and one face of a human. And down in the tank where the dolphin is a television screen with a split image, so the dolphin can see the dolphin and can see the person up in the computer room. And then there's a microphone and a loudspeaker. And that's just what the person at the other end has. And then the person at the other end has a keyboard in which you can type in letters, and the letters are translated into sounds, the 26 scales, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. And then they're pushed up 10 times to the frequency of the dolphin and fed out. So the dolphin gets hello, something like that, or hello, or whatever. And it's printed on the screen, hello. And the dolphins love to play. And you talk, they'll talk. So they go, and what they say is written on the screen. It's translated immediately into letters, and it's also sent down 10 octaves and sent back out and translated back and prints out. Okay? And John what he's doing is he's saying to the dolphins, look, we are very stupid, we humans. And all we can do is talk this way, but could we possibly exchange, would you help us? Would you learn our 26-syllable letter thing? And would you deign to, and he could say, see, you could see that she, the dolphin, could say, she could say, you humans, like Emmanuel said to me. Emmanuel said, you humans, you're all caught in your minds, and your minds are so dualistic. Why do you assume that when you merge into the one, you lost your separateness? It's a good one, isn't it? See, we have gotten caught in two, in good and evil, the bad guys and the good guys. The one who knows not that the prince of darkness is but the other face of the king of light knows not me, says the one. The game is transcending dualism to become the one and the two simultaneously. The appreciator of the one and the two. Like I've done a few marriages. I'm not a licensed marriage person. I just do it now and then, just sort of, I don't know why. It's not legal. I was walking up an aisle after a lecture one day and a couple said to me, would you marry us? I said, well, gee, I don't think I'm traveling to da-da-da-da-da. They said, well, would you just give us a blessing? I said, sure, come on off here and stand here. And we stood aside as people were walking by, and I just talked about what marriage was about for a moment. And we just went into a space together. And we got all done, and it took about 2 minutes. And they said, well, gee, I think we're married. I guess that's what it is. What I experience when I look at two people that are getting married, intentionally, consciously, is that two people are asking to use the vehicle of relationship as a method of awakening. A method of using the two to come into the one, so there is a one awareness, there is an us, not just a me and a him, or a me and a her. And then from us, they come back into the him and the her, or him and her and her. And they dance it exquisitely as impeccable warriors. Not warriors in the sense of antagonists, but in the sense of perfect players. So it's the two using the device of the relationship to come into the one through truth, through risk, through presence. A relationship that is living truth is on the edge of chaos every minute. If you think you can put it on the back burner, forget it, Charlie. The minute you put it, good morning, how are you? I'm fine, good, you know, and it's like, boy, 40 years. I go down to Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument to camp out, and everybody there is 70 at least and retired. And it's like an ad out of an insurance magazine. And we have a wonderful time. They're great people, and we have a good time, and they're living in the sun, and they're doing it beautifully, believe me. But so many of those marriages are so mechanical. Maybe like a Navajo sand painting, they have one little tiny place in them where the artist expresses the individuality. It's like whether you say, I'll have cream in the coffee today or not, or sugar or salt on my cereal. Sugar, but you've always taken salt. It takes that little much to wake it up. Mahatma Gandhi was leading a march, a satyagraha, to the sea. And after 2 days, he stopped it, and people had left their jobs and everything to go on this march, thousands of people. It was a great hardship, and his lieutenants came up and said, Mahatmaji, you can't stop now. He said, only God knows absolute truth. I only know relative truth. And what is true to me today was not true yesterday. My commitment is to truth, not to consistency. Can you imagine trying to live with a partner, let alone a country living with another country, in which there was living truth, in which everybody was being who they are from moment to moment? Since you and I have the responsibility not only to keep every relationship we're involved with living, but also to fulfill all of the other many levels of work we have to do in life. You can't blow it by becoming totally preoccupied with one and losing the others. So maybe you can't have perfection in your relationships unless that is your vehicle through. See, each of us has a unique way through. For one couple, relationship will be merely a comfortable ashramic setting from which to do some other kind of work. Maybe service is the yoga or meditation. For another couple, the relationship itself is the vehicle. And they, like in a Hindu marriage in which Krishna marries Radha or Sita marries Ram, in which you worship one another as the Guru. And there is the Divine Mother married to Shiva. And they worship each other. Who do you see when you look into the eyes of another human being? If you are going to survive in the 80s, what it would be useful for you to see, I'll tell you, is a fellow soul that has incarnated and is doing an interesting dance. Because that way you will be quiet as the changes occur, and you will be able to make optimum responses to them, remain light, and enjoy the play, at the same moment as fulfilling your responsibilities impeccably. Over Gandhi's tombstone is the inscription, "Think of the poorest person you have ever seen and ask whether your next act will be of any benefit to that person." The hot tub, $5 for blindness. Cambodia. The beauty of the sun today. The ocean. What is called upon for a conscious being is not to get lost in righteousness. Don't get lost in your heart sickness, Rachel's parents, and forget the perfection and the beauty of the universe. Maharaji used to say to me, Ramdas, when I'd be kvetching about this or that, like Bangladesh, Ramdas, don't you see it's all perfect? Perfect. Would you call what's going down today perfect? Would you? Could you? Dare you? Might we? Are you afraid that if you see the perfection, you will feel callous, cold, lacking in compassion? Well, if you feel that, then work on opening your heart and look around as Buddha did and look at the incredible suffering everywhere. But just because you're opening your heart to the suffering doesn't mean you should close your mind to the perfection of the universe. As Emmanuel said, don't get caught in duality. How about both of them? How about seeing that it is all perfect and beautiful and unfolding exquisitely? And you don't have to say, hey God, you really screwed up this time. What the hell are you doing with nuclear energy? For God's sakes, God. What are you trying to do, wipe us out? You can sit with God and say, God, help me to understand what the hell is going on. Or if I can't understand it because I'm too dense, at least quiet me down enough so I can figure out what part I can play in it all. And do it well. A lot of people come to me and they say, I'm confused. And I say, great, I am too. I mean, I don't have any idea who I am and I don't even care anymore. All I know is that from moment to moment, it feels appropriate that I am. And I am learning how to listen to my intuitive wisdom, which far supersedes my analytic, linear, rational mind that is a subsystem of a much greater system, which could be called the Tao or the Way or the Law or what the Torah points at or the Word of Allah or however you want to say it. In the beginning is the Word, and the Word is alive because the Word can only point at the unspeakable. And you have to live there too, to realize that there is formlessness out of which all this form is pouring forth. And yet all that is behind time, so really nothing is happening. So nothing is happening. So there's nothing to judge. If you come down to where something's happening, you see it's perfect because it's all lawful unfolding. And all we are enjoying is the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga, the age when Kali, the goddess of death, with skulls around her neck dripping and her tongue dripping blood, dances. She rises up and dances. Laughing. Ramakrishna sat by the river and he had a vision of a beautiful woman rising up out of the water of the river, and she was obviously large with child, and before his eyes she gave birth, and he was filled with rapture at the beauty of the birth, and she picked up the infant and she held it in her arms, caressing it and cooing to it and holding it to her breast. And then her aspect started to change and she took it into her hands and she opened her mouth and she devoured it into her mouth and she turned and walked back into the ocean. Can you stand back that far to just watch process? And at the same moment, as Trungpa said, accept your responsibility. At the same moment, become an exquisite incarnate. I finally figured out that if I wanted to be with God, I had to honor my incarnation. Alan Watts, he knew this, rascal that he was. And he and I would sit at times, and he'd say to me, Dick, that's he said, Dick, your problem is you're attached to emptiness. He said, but just imagine that you've got a microscope and you're focusing it, or a telescope. And when it's out of focus, it's all like a Ganzfeld, a homogeneous light field. And then it's like the white light. And then you bring it into focus slowly and slowly until you say, there's a dog, and there's a pussycat, and there's a stage, and there's a human. And you have the perfect focus to see God in form. And that's right here on this plane. See, when you start, before awakening, mountains, remember? Before awakening, you think you are your incarnation. Before awakening, you are busy being your incarnation. Then you are awake and you see there is no incarnation. Then to fulfill from awakening to enlightenment, you come back until you are the incarnation. But you are also free of identification with the incarnation. As the sutra says, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. And you learn to play your incarnation impeccably. We're in an interesting position in this incarnation. And we have to learn what it means to honor our bodies, honor our hearts, honor our minds, honor our parents, honor our city and county, honor our country, honor our humanity, honor our sentient beingness, honor our part of the ecosystem, honor the fact that we are God. All simultaneously. If you get lost in any one of them, you're psychotic. You go back to jail, don't collect your $200. You got to honor them all at once. And play each one perfectly but very lightly. And as you awaken on the physical human plane, you realize that you only have one thing to do that you can do for the relief of suffering of all sentient beings, and that is you work on yourself. But how do you work on yourself? Not in a narcissistic way. Because you must, as you get more conscious, recognize that who that self is none other than all of us. And you don't have any choice anymore. And you've got to sit in the hot tub and look into the eyes of the poorest human being you've ever met and justify your act at that moment. At least I do. I don't know about you. But as far as I know, you and I are in exactly the same space. And we all have to bring it together. There has to be integrity in our own existence. That's what voluntary simplicity is about. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we just eat what the poorest person in the world can eat and thus starve to death, as Simone Weil did. We have to be quiet enough and clear enough to hear what our unique part in the drama is, so that we can play our part, not another person's part, not Christ's part or Gandhi's part or Buddha's part, but our part, but play it so that we can look into the eyes of God and we can look into the eyes of the poorest being we've ever met and take the next step. And I cannot imagine God or the poorest person I have ever met not wanting me to be joyful, not wanting me to enjoy the beauty of that which is around me. And at the same moment, not to forget that person. What an exquisite dance for us. What the art form of getting high off paradox. It's perfect and it stinks. There's nothing to do, so get on with it and do what you can to relieve suffering, because what else are you going to do? And I've got to help you get free of your suffering, because your suffering is my suffering, and if you don't get free, I don't get free. I'm not doing it out of altruistic motives. You are me. I am your karma, you are mine. We are working on ourselves to become instruments of light. Let the light shine. To become instruments of light, and that light is not darkened by all the veils of our attachments. So that everywhere you go, you become an environment where anybody around you, if they are ready, can become free of suffering through your presence. Not that you do it to them, they do it to themselves. You merely create the environment for that to happen. Parent, take notice. Therapist, take notice. We do not do things for each other. And this is a hard one. In the first leg of Ashtanga Yoga, the 8th of the purifications of the yama is there will be neither giving nor receiving. Because if you're busy being the giver, the other person must be the receiver, and you've just pushed them away. Because it's only us. You need it, you use it. Who's giving who to what? Who's giving what to who?